Everyone, and welcome back to our second episode of Wisdom Work with Krista and Christy. We are so thrilled to be here. We want to thank everyone for the awesome welcome and the reception that we got after our first episode. We were blown away by the engagement already with this beautiful community. It's awesome to see that everyone is listening and participating and sending us feedback on topics they wanted to hear covered on the podcast. So we're just so grateful to be here and so thrilled to have all of you listening. So without further ado, Christy and I would like to talk about our next topic today, which was actually given to us by a listener. They wanted to hear more about nutrition and wellness. So that's actually my background, which was very fitting. So we thought this would be a very fun topic to do today. Christy and I have both been on wellness journeys for years. We'll talk a little bit about hers in a minute. But for me, it started way back in like middle school. I think that's when I kind of woke up to diet culture and what I should be looking like and the difference between healthy eating and unhealthy eating and all of this, the diet stuff. So I did some simple swaps and I ended up losing some weight as a preteen. And that really empowered me. And I started getting really curious as to why that happened and what was actually behind the science behind the decisions that I was making. So I went to school for nutrition and dietetics, graduated as a registered dietitian, and then wanted to get more holistic. So I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and got a background in holistic education, which is still what I use with clients today. And so today what we're going to talk about is some simple tips and tricks and different journeys that Christy and I have both been on and just the commonalities. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot about us, but then also hear some similarities within your own wellness journey. So I am so excited. So Christy, do you want to kick it off and tell us a little bit about your journey into wellness?
Absolutely. I'm very excited. First, let me say that Krista, that I get to be a student today in our conversation because Krista is the expert bringing the knowledge today. She's always given me tips and tools along the way for as long as we've been friends. And actually, one of our first meetings that we had, we were talking about our coffee meetups. We were talking about green smoothies. And Krista, I feel like you revolutionized the green smoothie game here for us. And we were in our early 20s. But for me, I really think I started to tap into just healthy eating. Maybe, I'd say I was probably 18 or 19. The first real reason why I think I noticed it was because my metabolism began to shift. Always, my whole life from when I was a little girl, I could eat anything and I never really worried about it. I didn't gain weight. It just wasn't an issue. It's how I was built. But then things started to shift when I was about 18 or 19 and I started to see my body change and I was thinking, okay, so apparently I have to be aware of this now and what do I need to do? So I'd say that's when I started to kind of just be aware of what I was eating and what it was, the results it was producing for me. But I'd say when I really started to come to understand my relationship with food and the things that I was putting into my body really didn't come into play until after my mom passed away. Because when my mom died, I was 24. And at the time I had been recreationally smoking, probably drinking too much and not exactly taking all of the health consequences seriously. And as I know, many of my peers were acting the same way. But for me, it was a light bulb moment when my mom passed away because ultimately she died from a disease that impacted her lungs and then her kidneys. But I remember thinking shortly after she died, why would I ever take my health for granted again after seeing, what happened to her? And it just, I don't know, it just kind of completely shifted my perspective of I have it in my control to maybe change the way that I see my health. And I have it in my power to create the life I want to live, the healthy life that I want to live. So for me, that's when things really started to shift. And I started looking more into the ingredients in things. I started to learn that, so I am predisposed to autoimmune conditions because it's in my family. My mom's disease that she died from was autoimmune. Her mother died from an autoimmune disease. Like, it's just in my family. So one thing that really stuck with me was a doctor said to me, you're predisposed to autoimmune conditions, and it's something in your environment could trigger it in you. And he said, don't think of your environment as just the air you breathe or the space that's around you. You have to pay attention to the environment in your body. And the things that you're putting into your body could very well trigger this predisposition to autoimmune disease. So that was really eye-opening for me. And again, it just kind of led me to explore more about organic foods, whole foods, taking out processed foods. I immediately quit smoking. I took into effect like how much I was drinking, what I was drinking. And this was social drinking, but I wasn't thinking about any of that and how it was maybe playing a role in my health. So anyway, that's really where it all started for me. My desire to know more, learn more. And then the more I learned, it's kind of like you can't unknow the knowledge once you have it. And I know that's probably very similar to your journey. It's like the more knowledge you acquire about this, you just want to keep implementing healthy practices. So tell us more about, how you got really onto that journey to dig deeper into all of that.
Yeah, thank you. I love all that you said around your curiosity for wellness, because that's kind of where mine started as well, with losing a little bit of weight like in 6th grade and feeling good and feeling more energy and just really wanting to learn more. Like, I really wanted to get curious. I talked a little bit about my background on Christy's other podcast, Be the Good, and how I went to an all-girls high school and we would diet all the time for dances. Like, we would go on these crash fad diets and eat, iceberg lettuce and oranges and then binge on croutons, at lunch. So it was just like, it was wild. So I wanted to understand like what the heck is going on in our bodies, that certain foods can do certain things and how certain diet plans can actually help disease states. So I did get a lot of science at University of Delaware, and that was more medical nutrition therapy. So I learned a lot about how to heal disease through diet, which is absolutely necessary and a whole sector in and of itself that we need clinical dietitians. That was not me. I really wanted to work with healthy people. I wanted to work in wellness. That wasn't even a thing back then when I graduated college. So it was like just starting the wellness boom. So any dietitians listening or any, budding dietitians listening, like, you have so many options right now. So if you are interested in wellness, like, keep going with that passion. So I got my RD because I was halfway through when I realized like I wanted more healthy living kind of stuff as opposed to disease management. And that's why I went to integrative nutrition. So up in New York, I think that's when we actually reconnected, Chris, because when we were talking at our Starbucks dates, I was, I think, in classes in New York, and it was 6 months long. So what that taught me, so as an RD, I was learning I am the expert for diet. Like, I need to teach people what it is that they should eat. And that never sat well with me. So when I got to IIN, they taught me everyone has this bio-individuality. So everyone's the expert of their own bodies. And we as coaches, as health coaches, can help facilitate what are those symptoms? What are those signs? What's that feedback that your body's sending you after everything you eat, after everyone you talk to, after everything you read or watch? Like, we're getting feedback nonstop. It's a constant dance in our bodies. So I love that you talked about that internal environment, because it is alive and well, and it's up to us to listen to those things, because that's how we can create this healthy diet, healthy home environment, healthy relationships. So this holistic umbrella I just absolutely love, because at the time I was in school there, I was also working full-time as a corporate health coach. And I saw over 5,000 clients over the phone. It was corporate health coaching telephonically. And what I was seeing was that nobody was, I mean, some people were talking about food, but it was a lot more about stress management, a lot more about I'm in a dead end job. I hate my job. I'm so bored in my marriage. My relationships aren't good. I don't have energy to exercise. I am not sleeping well. Like, I don't travel. So there was like a whole thing that I felt like that's way out of my scope. I can't really talk about this. And IIN gave us this language of primary foods and secondary foods. So this primary food theory is, I love this. I start every call with clients this way, is that when your primary foods are out of balance, your primary foods are your relationships, your career, your spiritual practice, and your physical activity. When any of those areas of your life are out of balance, there's typically an over-dependency on secondary foods we actually eat. So I always joke, like, if you hate your job, eating more broccoli isn't going to help that, right? Or if you're not in a great, healthy, fun marriage or relationship, like, eating more green smoothies isn't going to help that. But it definitely enhances if your primary foods are imbalanced. Or in balance. So that was awesome. That was really kind of the first way of getting into people's lives in a way that I felt comfortable within my skill set and for my own life. So what IIN taught us was, this is your own journey. So we had 6 months of experts teaching us their anecdotal research of what they do with clients. We had Barry Sears, who wrote the Zone Diet. We had Deepak Chopra. We had Andrew Weil. We had Mark Hyman. I mean, these were all our teachers. These are all the people's books I had on my shelf. So I was learning from these people firsthand, who, Arthur Agassiz, who wrote South Beach. So all these diet plans and dietary theories we were learning about. And what we learned was that they all work. They all work for some people, but they don't work for everybody. So this was the constant internal battle, because after I heard these speakers, I was like, oh, I'm sold. Like, I'm going home and I'm going to do this diet for the next week or month before I go back to class. And I did. And I learned stuff about my body and what it wanted and what it didn't want, and learned about the quality of foods and how much that impacts health. So like you said about the ingredients. And I think food is so foundational in healing. Not only just our bodies, but our minds, our spirits, and our emotional selves. So if we can get closer to earth, if we can take out the middleman and get closer to where our food comes from, and look at the sourcing of where our food is, that's really the foundation. I mean, if we can get down to earth, if we can bring ourselves back down to earth and even start a garden or CSA, join a community supported agriculture where you're getting a box of food from the farm, they're doing the work, but you're eating the fresh, farm box each week. That can be very, very helpful in reprogramming your cellular health. So when we reprogram ourselves on a cellular level, our bodies start craving those foods. So our bodies wake up. It's like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is energy. This is nutrition. This is, vitamins and minerals. So I just love that whole, because I mentioned earlier, when I lost weight in grade school, I was so focused on numbers and Weight Watchers. Not that there's anything wrong with any of that stuff, but what I shifted was from weight to health and to nourishment. So I always say, don't count your calories, but calories do count. So watch portions and make sure you're learning what is okay for your body and how much, because that's part of caring for yourself. That's part of this intuitive eating, this mindfulness, and this wisdom. This is how it pulls into wisdom work, because you're honoring the wisdom within. I believe everyone knows what they should be eating. This is not rocket science. We all know a lot more plants is better than less plants. More water is better than other stuff. So, staying hydrated, giving yourself the best quality of food possible within reason. And then here's the huge caveat, never feeling guilty about the other stuff, but using it as an experiment, listening to how your body feels. Like today, I gave my son a yes day. So we're going to In-N-Out for dinner. And I'm excited because we don't do that often, but I'm there's no guilt associated with it, and we're going to enjoy it, and it's just food. So I just love that, trusting the body, that you have these mechanisms in place to detox every night. We detox every night we sleep. So what I think is best as far as self-love and self-care goes is that you don't want to overload your system on a daily basis, especially with all the education we have now about nutrition, and the toxicity in our environments, and the plants and the soil like are really deprived of a lot of nutrients nowadays. So finding the best quality and giving yourself that gift, because I think that's really what it is it's a beautiful gift to nourish yourself.
Absolutely. And I love how you speak about, well, it's really about having a balanced perspective. That's, I would say when I was telling you about, my experience with coming to understand that I needed to have a healthier perspective, I went full speed into some of these like crazy, I don't even know if I call them diets, but ways of like, I will only eat organic. I will only eat this, that, sometimes you can become, and you realize that this is the part where when you talked about like you could eat as much broccoli as you want or as many green smoothies as you want, if you're not emotionally balanced and well, none of that's going to matter. And I also came to learn that in what I was doing. I was just throwing myself into, okay, well, I'll be healthy if I just eat X, Y, and Z. And if I only eat organic and I only, and I think I had to go through that process to realize that it was a little crazy, and to take a couple steps back and understand that, wait, I still really love to eat. I love food, and I am a foodie at heart. Like I love to cook, and I have always appreciated food my whole life. So another thing that we have in common. And I think that it's all about finding that balanced perspective so that you, like you said, you don't have the guilt over the fact that on Friday, I'm going to make homemade pizzas and they're going to be awesome. I'm going to have burgers on Saturday night but I try to, how I found balance was just like you said, getting back to the earth and prioritizing my whole foods, fruits, vegetables, clean products. 90% of the time, that's what I'm focusing on eating. But then I allow myself to have those moments where I'm indulging in something that's not so healthy. But I also always tell my kids this. We were out to lunch somewhere in the middle of the day on vacation, and we had a meal that we would not normally have in the middle of the day, like wings, burgers, fries. And we all sat there and we're like, ugh, like we still have to do stuff today. And I said to the kids, I'm like, all right, here's an important thing I want you to remember. Eating is really for energy. So if we were to have eaten a lighter meal, we would have come out of that restaurant feeling like ready to tackle the rest of our day. Instead, we all felt like we needed to take a nap. That's okay. We were on vacation, and that's what vacation's about. But I have learned to carefully, strategically decide when I'm going to have the meals that are going to make me feel sluggish or tired. Like I'll have them at night before, on a Friday night, and I'm going to go to bed and get a good night's sleep. But it is important to really pay attention to what you're eating and how it's making you feel. Because it just says so much about your overall health. If you're constantly tired, if you're constantly sluggish or frustrated, or all your emotions, you can speak better to this than I could. But that's something that I've learned for myself, is that I have to listen to my body. Like I wasn't feeling well last night. Actually, I felt like a cold coming on, and I decided drink a cup of ginger tea, go to bed on time. And I got like 10 hours of sleep, and I woke up this morning feeling much better. But those are the things that I've learned to really practice, listening to my body, giving my body what it wants and needs. Most of the time now, it wants and needs the healthier stuff. So just like you said, you begin to crave those kind of things because of the way that if you're paying attention to the way that they make you feel overall, you're actually you're going to want those things over the not so great things. Right.
So I have an interesting counter to this, because like you said earlier, where you kind of get overwhelmed with like all of the health information and you want to do your best, so you like get a little too rigid about it. that there's actually something called orthorexia nervosa, which means overly health conscious. Like, and this was me. This is like, I can't eat a non-organic meat at a barbecue. Like, I know too much. Like, I know what happens, and that's not going in my body. So like, you don't have this balanced perspective. It's more like, you know, and it was all good meaning for me. I was like, I want just to put the best things in my body. I don't want to destroy anything that I've built so, you know, carefully. But that really took out a lot of fun. And it took out a lot of like celebration. And like you said, I love food. Like, food is such a big part of our lives. And it wasn't until recently, I think, when I did the Sacred Motherhood Summit that you were on, one of my good friends, Corinne, she's a dietitian as well, but she does body image and eating disorder dietitian. So she has this lens that I got really curious about because of our diet culture and like how much people are talking about their bodies, talking about weight. I mean, if you just listen in the grocery store, you'll hear people chatting about like, oh, I'm trying to do this. I'm doing my fasting. I can't eat this. I can't eat that. And it's just like, it's a lot of chatter about diets and nutrition and body image and stuff. So I got curious, like, where am I showing up not healthy in this culture? Because I've been so programmed, I mean, not only personally, but professionally, on what's right and what's wrong. And honestly, it's like my journey now is unlearning the right and wrong. It's like all food fits. She had a great line on our interview together on the Motherhood Summit. It was like, because we were talking about postpartum body image. And she said, like, I have no morality around food. And I was like, really? Like, you don't think some foods are better than others? And she's like, no. Like, all food fits. All food is just food. Like, take the charge off of food. It's like you said, it's just fuel. So what do you want to choose? Like, how do you want to choose to feel? Feed your body that. If you want to choose to feel sluggish because you're, you know, on vacation and you're just kind of chilling and you're not needing the energy, then indulge. If you're at home and you're trying to work and you have kids that you got to teach and you're doing all this stuff, like, you need to be on your A game and like give your body the foods that really energize you and make you feel good. So my journey recently has actually been saying yes to more foods that I think are automatic no's, you know, or like noticing the guilt around, or noticing the relationship I have around like indulging, and then am I trying to make up for it in other meals, like as penance? And it's like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Like, when I really look at myself at like from a bird's eye view and like watch what I'm doing in my relationship to food, and it's like very eye-opening for me. So that's kind of been my recent journey on like saying yes more to, like, John Paul during quarantine, he started making sourdough bread. And before, we were more on like a paleo vegan kind of lifestyle. So we would do like high quality meats or fish every once in a while with like lots of veggies. And I do love vegetables and fruits. So that worked for me. But I also love like nuts and seeds and lentils and legumes. Like, I love all the plant-based stuff. Like, that feels really good in my body, but like a little bit of animal-based protein feels good too for me. My husband, though, John Paul, he has an autoimmune disease. So his dietary needs are like night and day for me. So it makes it very challenging. But anyway, he started making the sourdough in quarantine, and I was like, oh boy, like, we haven't had this much gluten or like carbs in our diets in a long time. And like having kids, I mean, that all goes out the window anyway, because you have to have that else. But it's like, I started noticing, and I was like, you are allowed to have this, like, enjoy it. And I started watching myself talk, and I was like, you don't have to make up for this at the next meal. Like, that's all diet culture. That's all this like cultural stuff. And also, as a caveat to this conversation, we know that this may be triggering to some people that have had a history with eating disorders or disordered eating. We're here for you. So please reach out to us if you want to talk more about specific questions or things that you've had going on. Because like I said, just recently, it's come to light for me how much I've been thinking in like a way that's not that healthy. So I just wanted to say that in case anybody else that's listening is feeling that way, or, you know, also I struggle as a dietitian and as like the expert to even say like, sure, have whatever you want.
I'm so glad you're saying it though, because it's refreshing. And I think that often, I mean, that's just so honest of you. And I'm so glad that you're saying it, because so many of us have that conversation in our head, the constant, like, it's the shoulds. We talked about this on the last episode, like all the shoulds of once you program.
Have a green smoothie.
Yes, I should be having this. I shouldn't want that. And I think we look to people who are the experts and think, well, they wouldn't do that. You know, like they wouldn't cheat. They wouldn't do,
it's this whole cheating, like good and bad thing.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you're like basically like knocking that whole tower of thought over. Because we need to. And I think that especially as females, but I know that men deal with this too, like body image is such a huge trigger point for all of us. That even I find, even as we're getting older, I'm thinking I can see around us like people who are still obsessing over the fact that we should look like we're in our 20s and our 30s, and we should look like we're in our 30s and we're in our 40s. And I don't know. I personally, I have decided that I just want to be healthy. Like, and I think I may have a unique perspective in the sense of like having watched my mom. I'm sorry that I'm always bringing that up, but it's a huge part of my story. She was 58 when she passed away. So that has just given me a completely different perspective of like what I really value is being healthy. And as I get older, like I know that the more that I focus on my health, the more vitality I will have, the more I will be able to experience my life to the fullest. And, you know, we have young kids. And I know that many people listening probably do also. You know, it's also about instilling these ideas. I'd like to talk to you about that, like instilling these ideas, this knowledge in our kids, you know. Also, I worry that like, you know, do we get too crazy about what they can and can't have? I know like most moms, it's like your first kid is, if you have multiple kids, your first kid is like, he's my best eater. Like he chooses to eat salad. He loves all the good stuff. But as the kids went on, second and third are not so great. My third, we call him snack attack, because like literally all he wants to eat is junk. So I'm not winning over here. I'm winning on like the first, but not the rest. But like how do we instill like the good knowledge in them without making it, you know, creating obsessive qualities in them too? We need to break those kind of patterns.
Oh my God, what a great question. And thank you for bringing this to the forefront, because I think that's what the urgency was for me around healing the relationship mentally that I had around food and nutrition for Damon, for my son, because I'm like, I don't want to be the mom that's talking about her weight. I don't want to be the mom that's talking about her diet after the holidays to lose it. I mean, I never really was, because that wasn't my, you know, the way I talked anyway, but I hear it around like his friends' moms. And we're very body positive here in our house. So it's like, and I also really believe, I have a lot to say about this. I believe that the kids give us so much more than we actually give them. So when a toddler looks in the mirror, watch them, like moms and dads listening, like watch how they respond to their bodies. They look at their bellies and they, you know, they're cute, adorable little protruding like 2-year-old bellies. And they are in awe. They are like, oh my gosh, look at my belly button. Look at my belly. Like, look at the rolls on my arms. It's so funny. Like, you know, they are just so awestruck. And I'm like, what if we could do that? Like, what if adults in our age range or like even older could be like, oh, look at my legs, look how strong they look, you know, like, and say kind things when we look in the mirror. Like what a difference that would be. And we work on this with my clients too, but it's just like fake it till you make it. Like, I know you won't believe it in the beginning because we were programmed not to. We were programmed to think by culture and society we are inherently wrong, and there's a lotion that'll help you, and there's a diet that will fix you, and there's, you know, a potion that you can drink that will solve everything. You know, so it's a marketing thing. Don't be fooled. It's a business. Like, they want you to think negatively about yourself so that you'll buy their products. It's a really good business model, but it's not a healthy overall way of living. So, oh my gosh, it was so funny. I'll tell you one quick story, but I was doing a presentation last week for this parent-baby group that I went to that literally saved my life postpartum. It was great education, great support. The facilitators are just world-class. So I was giving this talk on nutrition, feeding the whole family. And we got into this conversation around body image and how this talk that I just gave, I was answering questions at the end, and one woman was beautifully brave and said how this is very triggering for her because she had gone through a history with body image issues and eating disorders. And I just was so grateful that she brought this up because it opened up Pandora's box in the best way possible of like all of this stuff that we've taken on to believe that are just false. And it's just like this brainwashing almost about what we should look like postpartum, or how quickly we should be back at Target running our errands, or how quickly we should get in our pre-pregnancy pants. Like, what? Like, why? So anyway, that whole thing happened. So Christine, my awesome mentor, she was also on the summit that I did, the Sacred Motherhood Summit. She talks about how when her little girl had her friends over, they were about 13 years old. There were two girls that were with her daughter in the room. They were doing makeup and like all these girly stuff. And Christine's in the other room reading the paper or magazine. And she sees this ad, and it was an ad for cellulite cream. And she said, the ad read, 98% of women have cellulite, like buy this cream. She rips out the ad, she goes into the girl's room, and she goes, look at this. This says 98% of women have cellulite. You know what that means? That means it's normal. She's like, 98% of women also have hands. Should we do something to get rid of our hands? I was dying laughing. Like, it just put in perspective so clearly, like how much we buy in to things that we think are wrong about us, when it's like, no, I just look this way and you look that way. Like, own it.
Yeah. And how would you suggest counteracting that for the kids? I mean, like, especially, I guess maybe like, what are good practices of like kids that are in the younger age group? Like you said, you talk a lot about body positivity, but then like, as they get into teenagers, like, how do you counteract what, society is telling them they're supposed to look like?
Yeah. So Ellen Satter, she's another dietitian that does a lot with children's health. She talks about the when, the what, the where, and the how the kids should be eating. So parents are in charge, or safe caregivers are in charge of the what and the when that the kids are eating. So they prepare the meal, they give them what they're eating, and they say when we're eating, like dinner time's at 5:30. The children are in charge of the if and the how much. So if they choose not to eat, they're listening to their bodies. Little kids, so the other thing is, after talking to so many parents and moms, it's like, we think they should eat this much. But their bodies are so small, and if they're snacking all day long, or if they're having, like, my son clumps, so he does like, decent sized breakfast, in my perspective, a snack mid-morning, and then like a big lunch. So he's usually not hungry for dinner, which it makes us pull our hair out, because it's like, why aren't you eating? But if you think about, like, if you're a breastfeeding mom, these kids, they decide when they pull off and when they go to, or they'll cry when they're hungry, and they have the cues. They have this internal dialogue of saying when they're full, when they're hungry, and they'll let us know if we're honoring that. So this goes back to this internal wisdom at birth. Like, they know when they eat, they know when to eat, they know how much to eat, they'll pull off when they're done. And so if we can kind of harness that knowledge of saying, like, okay, I'm providing the plethora of ingredients here, like I'm providing the the rainbow of color for you to choose from, but I'm not going to force feed anything. I'm not going to talk about food. I'm not going to talk about your body. If I'm talking about your body, it's around health. It's around like greens help your blood and your heart pump, or, this helps your muscles. Like this helps your hair. This helps your, Damon, my son, he goes, I tripped over something when I was putting him to bed one night because it was dark in the room. And he goes, Mama, you need more carrots. Because I would say carrots are for night vision. So it's like, pulling them back into like why the things that we're eating, because they're good for us for a certain reason. That kind of stuff I think can be very positive, but not about weight, not about you're getting big, or, we have to look, because then that's pulling into a conversation we don't want to have. We don't want to talk about the comparison of bodies. Every body is totally different. That's why we all need different foods and different amounts. So it's understanding, putting the discussion back into them and saying, we always say, Damon, you let us know when you're full. Listen to your body. And your body knows, like when you're hungry, when you're full. So it's an interesting shift if that's something that you're not doing in your household, to just try and to see. And the kids may need to unlearn some things if you're kind of further on in the way that you have been doing things and it hasn't been this way. So it's just an experiment. But again, I'm here for anybody that wants to chat more about this, because I think it does take a lot of support. And I follow a lot of people on Instagram that are therapists or also dietitians that are specializing in children nutrition, because that's a whole nother gamut, I think. For me, I'm more skilled with like adult women specifically, but it's a big conversation.
But I think that's what's great about what you're able to bring to the table here today is that, and I love that you keep saying like reach out if you need to, because it may not be something that you specifically specialize in, but you're so attuned to all of these different resources that anybody that's listening, that whether you're struggling with something yourself, you're worried about, maybe you have a preteen and you're already seeing them start to worry about their body image, or you're worried about their weight fluctuating or whatever, they could reach out and maybe you can point them in the right direction. And
absolutely,
I think that I also love that you talk about the mindfulness of it all, really for all of us, but especially for kids, for them to understand that, if you can tune into your own body and listen to what your body is asking of you, instead of looking outside of yourself for the answers, this is the wisdom work, right?
Yes.
Is that we have the answers already inside of us, and to teach our kids that is, I think, invaluable to the skill sets that you're giving them, setting them up for their future, to just teach them, come within, ask yourself something as simple as, am I full? Or am I eating because I'm bored? Or am I choosing this snack because I'm sad about something and I think it's going to make me feel better? Or, you know what I mean? Like that, having those honest conversations and teaching your child to have those honest conversations with themselves will maybe set them up for healthier practices going forward.
Yes.
Right?
Totally. I love that. And I think too, what we've come to realize in our culture and society is that food is a very socially acceptable way of numbing. So it's like, be mindful of when you're overeating because your primary foods are out of balance. So look at different habits that you may be already doing that are healthy, like you may be going to bed at a certain time that you enjoy and that your body feels good with. So start another practice and stack on top of those habits that you already do. So if you're already eating a green smoothie or drinking a green smoothie every morning for breakfast, then maybe drink a glass of water before that, because you're going to do the other thing. So there's ways to, and this is, I always recommend for clients, is like, you are trying to do these healthy things one step at a time. Make it small, make it really meaningful, make it very achievable, because that's when you're going to feel empowered. You're like, okay, I just did that for a week. I feel awesome. Or I just ate that and I don't feel great. Like, that's how I know I'm not going to go there again. So it's this inner wisdom work. I think this ties in so beautifully to this whole podcast that we're doing, this larger conversation of honoring that you have the answers. It's the work that you need to do to dive deep, because it could be very, very low, that voice in the beginning. And when you're fostering this trust, when you're deconstructing your cravings, when you're deconstructing, like, what do I feel like right now? I feel the hunger pangs in my stomach. I know it's true hunger. Like, I haven't eaten in a couple hours, so I have to eat. But what do I feel like? Do I feel like something cold, something hot, something crunchy, something salty, something sweet, something frozen? Like, whatever it may be, like, ask yourself these questions and start to listen, then start to respond to the answer you're getting. That's when the trust is built. That's when lifelong health can start to happen, and vitality.
I love that. I love that. And while we're on this train of tips, I was thinking that maybe as we close our conversation here, let's do a little bit of like back and forth here, where you can tell me the things, like your toolkit of wellness,
Sure.
like the habits that you have, the things that are your go-to practices to stay balanced and well. And I'll do the same.
Awesome.
And maybe just add in any tips that you have as well.
Excellent. Okay. So, all right. So let's start at the beginning of the day. So first thing in the morning, drinking a big glass of water. I started this a couple years ago, like 16 ounces of water. It can be warm, it can be cold, whatever. But if you add lemon, that helps with the drainage of the lymph nodes. So it's extra detoxifying. You don't have to, but just getting that 16 ounces of water in first thing in the morning is awesome, because we're the most dehydrated then. That's when everybody weighs themselves, because we're the lightest. So we want to make sure we're hydrating. That's the first thing you can do to give yourself what you need. So once you're hydrated, then you can finally like think about, okay, what is it that I feel like eating today? And then you give yourself what that is. For me, for years ago, it was green smoothies. Every morning it was like my go-to, because it gave me so much energy. The greens were so loaded with chlorophyll, which oxygenates the blood system. It fills your body with nutrients and floods your whole system with good nutrition. So I started that a while ago. That's like hit or miss nowadays, just based on weather. And if I'm cold, I don't feel like that, then I'll have something hot. So again, just listen to what you want. And then tea or coffee, because at that point, what a lot of people have said, and myself included, is like, you don't really need that extra jolt. When you're hydrated, you're nutrient dense, you're filling your body with nutrients, and you feel energized, you feel good. You don't really need that coffee or tea. But if you like the taste, by all means, enjoy it. But after those other things. So that's one of my go-tos. I have like all my liquids, like my water, my smoothie, my coffee. Then I have to work out. I have to work out for mental health. Like, it is my go-to. So the pandemic was hard for me, because I'm usually a yoga girl. So I love going to yoga classes, hot yoga, yin yoga, all the kinds of yoga. So once we were able to get back to that was so helpful for me, because just seeing the clear space in the studio, being on my mat, zoning out, like, that's a meditation for me. So that helps me so much with mental health and spiritual health, and just clearing, just cleansing, get out of my head. But walks in nature are also my go-to. I absolutely love that for grounding, or if I'm thinking too much, just be without a podcast or without talking on the phone. That's the trick.
Yeah.
Like, just being with myself, spending time with myself, and like getting into my heart center as opposed to my head, like the longest journey, so that's a good go-to for me. I also love journaling. This is one of my things, like, I need to do this more. So this would be one of my goals, is I always drink water in the morning. So I could just sit and journal while I'm drinking my water. Like, that's what I mean by the stacking habits. So that's what I'll say is my goal. I have to journal daily. I just want to get some thoughts out. Like, I just want to start the process of writing every day, because I think that's very therapeutic. What else do I do? So then I usually try and have a lot of plants early in the day, and then dinner's kind of like whatever we're having and whatever I feel like. So then I'll have lunch, and then, do something outside, like a play thing. So sun is really important to me too. That's why we're in Southern California. So sun is really important. I have to get outside and get some sun each day. That helps my mood so much. And then what we've started, since Damon has his own room now, John Paul and I have our bedroom back after years of like co-sleeping and playing musical beds. we're able to read a book at night, like an actual book, not on our screens, because we can have the lights on without him being in bed. So that actually has been such a beautiful habit to go back to. So we read with the lights on before bed, and that actually helps a lot with transitioning into sleep. I love sleep. I'm very good at it. So with having a young child, like that was a really hard thing for me with the lack of sleep. So I feel very grateful that we're back to that. So sleep, I also very much, John Paul and I both very much prioritize healthy quality sleep and doing whatever we can. Like I shower at night to just wash the day off. I wash my face, I do my floss, brush my teeth, like all my routine. I always create like these rituals. I love rituals in my life, and like having like steeping each part of my day with rituals. So like the candle's lit right now for all of you listening, and just kind of clearing the space first before I do anything sacred. So I do that a lot, and yeah, so
I love
kind of my
I love all of it.
I meditating and chanting too. And
That's awesome.
Wherever that fits. So the mindful mothering is usually where it comes through.
I think it's so nice to just hear like that perspective, and everybody listening, you know, you'll be able to draw something from each of our sharings that maybe you can relate to, or it's something new that you could try and throw into the mix of your day. But I totally relate to, first and foremost, the needing the exercise as a mental necessity. That is how I've always said that I stay sane, you know, is by having that outlet. However, same thing as I was with food. Early on, I was neurotic about exercise. And it was never the same thing. I was always kind of from one thing to the next, but I was neurotic about having an exercise practice. And I had to come to a point where I acknowledged that both of those things were unhealthy, being fanatical about working out and being fanatical about what I was eating. They're not healthy, even though you convince yourself that they are. It's really not a healthy thing to be so obsessive. So grateful that over the years I have come to trust my body more, listen to my body more, and understand what it needs. Also, I'm home all the time with my kids. So many of the ways that I could maybe exercise or get out to a gym or something, or even the yoga class, which I too love yoga. And prior to kids, I went to yoga class all the time. That's kind of been taken off the table because I just can't fit it into my schedule. So everything that I do is from home. But I'm grateful that one of the things that came out of the pandemic was that there's so many online workout resources now that like that's where I get it in at this point. I love to go for a run if I can fit it in, but that's usually like 3 times a month that I actually have the opportunity to. So I take a long run when I can. That's the best way to clear my mind. But again, in listening to my body, I wake up and I ask myself, like, what are you in the mood for today? And sometimes it's, I want to hit that mat and go hard for like a HIIT class, and I want to sweat and I want to feel like exhausted at the end of it. I know right away when I wake up if I have that kind of energy. Or like, you know, I may wake up and I'm sore from a couple days of doing that kind of workout. So I'll choose to just do a restorative yoga class. And I'm giving my body what it's asking for. Or like today, I told you last night I wasn't feeling great. So I woke up this morning and I said to myself, you're going to lay in bed with the kids and you're going to watch TV and you're not going to do anything. Yeah. And it actually, that's a huge accomplishment for me, coming from somebody who was obsessive about working out to somebody who's now found balance. I've come to understand that like the most important part of your overall well-being is balance and prioritizing what your body is telling you it needs. So I start the day off with some sort of movement if I'm feeling up for it. If I'm feeling completely depleted, I choose to rest. But also one of my favorite things this summer has been I started my own garden out back. And I've been growing kale and Swiss chard, and I now have beets coming in and lettuce and celery. And I am so excited. I can't tell you. Every morning I am like, okay, I get my shoes on, I put my sunglasses on, and I head out to snip my kale for my morning omelet.
That's awesome.
And so that's been something that I've been trying to do, is actually load the veggies in early. Like I have an egg white omelet that's loaded with greens, which is wonderful this summer. It's been fresh from the garden. So I feel like I'm having like a really pampered moment every morning when I make myself this omelet. So also hydrating. I am the same way. Drink a lot of water in the morning to get the day started. I love coffee, but unfortunately I've had to admit to myself that I have a major caffeine sensitivity. So I usually will choose to have a tea, like a decaffeinated tea, which I know is not very fun, but it's tea is very soothing to me, and I like to start my day like that. Sometimes I'll have coffee if I want it, but I try not to have it every day. And then my lunch I try to keep on the lighter side, but still with like having a protein, lots of veggies. Sometimes I'll have like quinoa with it. Because I'm going so much with the kids, I know like we're at the pool all day, or we're just on the move in the summertime, especially. So I just try to have something that's going to fuel me and get me through the rest of the day. And at dinner time is when I really try to focus on us having our healthiest meal, especially because that's when I know I can get it in the kids. We try to, knock on wood, sit down every night for a meal together, which I know it may become impossible as they get older and like everybody's got different schedules. But for right now, we've been able to do that for the most part. And it's really important to me. It's something for some reason I hold very dear to my heart, is that we sit down and we have a meal together every night around the table. And I am just always trying to pack that meal full of like as many varied veggies as I can. I'm proud to say that my kids will eat mostly anything that I cook. And I know that sounds obnoxious because a lot of kids don't. So I don't want to seem like it's, everybody should feel like that's the way it should be going at their dinner table. But I have worked really hard at it over the years. There may be some bribery involved with dessert. I will admit to that. But my point is, I just try to constantly give them new things, and force them to kind of like taste or press their limits with their taste buds, and just try all sorts of new things. And I want them to know what it's like to have raw vegetables. I do cook vegetables too, but like they are pretty open to all of that. And that has been something that I've been focusing on foundationally for them with their eating, is just understand what these things taste like and how good they are for you and how they make you feel, so that hopefully when you're given the choice, you'll choose those kind of things. But I do think it's important to just try and give them as much variety as you can, so that maybe they discover something that they didn't know that they would like. So anyway, for wellness, again, for me, it's sleep also is a huge thing for me. I've learned over the years that is the number one factor in my overall well-being is my sleep. That if I don't get enough sleep, it negatively impacts my health on every other level. So I've learned to really listen to that. If I'm feeling super stressed, I've had a really hard day, I will put myself in bed the minute the kids go to sleep. I meditate, and that's the best way for me to just like, I drift off into sleep. And I have a pretty good night's sleep if I do that. I too love to sit in bed and read a book. It's just recently that I've been able to stay up long enough to read without passing out, because my kids are now at the age where it's like, it's not as physically exhausting as it was when they were like toddlers. During that frame of life, I was pretty much just getting right to bed and passing out, and I couldn't keep my eyes open. But I agree. I really like to read too, if I can, before bed. But I think the number one tip that I would give anybody is, it comes back to the same theme of listening to yourself, listening to what your body needs, what your body wants. Like you said, the foods that your body likes, the foods that your body's asking for are not going to be the same as everybody else's. And that's really important to like tune into that knowledge within yourself and to make your decisions accordingly.
Beautiful. I love that. I will also add real quick, because I forgot to mention this on the call, and I wanted to share it with the women listening, because hormones matter so much. The fact that when you said you were exercising based on how you're feeling, that's awesome. I love that you're going within to ask that first, because I think that's so valuable. And there's been a lot of research done right now on cycle syncing. So when we have, during each week of our cycle, we have 4 weeks in our cycle. So each week of our cycle, different foods can support us, different exercises can support us. And when we do those things on opposite weeks, like it may not help us as much. So for example, when you have your period, it's not recommended to do a HIIT or to do extra strenuous exercises. It could be laying in bed. That could count as a workout. Like you can just take a nap, just rest your body, give yourself that time because your body's doing a lot to just shed the lining. So it is interesting to just think about, acquiring knowledge is great, and then utilizing the wisdom within to allow the knowledge to validate itself. So utilizing, not getting too much outside information that doesn't really resonate, but then utilizing what the wisdom inside of you is saying, and then you can really validate what you're learning to support your whole system and your body, your environment, everything. So I love that you brought that up because it really reminded me. I wanted to mention that today because it's something I've been trying to do also. And it's the weeks to try to eat certain foods those weeks and see if my body feels like it. Number one, like utilize the information, but then check in and say, like, do I feel like eating this during this week? And if it's no, then I won't. But if it is, I'll use that as a tool, as like, that's interesting that this can be, different hormones are supported by different foods and different workouts and all the things that we do. So I want to make sure I am giving my body the best tools it possibly can during the times it needs it the most.
Awesome. That's such great advice. And it's a great point to make, especially for women. Just that we have to tune in and really pay attention to what our body is asking of us and telling us, and to be mindful and respectful to the fact that your body has varying, challenges that it's facing each day,
yes,
hormonally. So that's a great point. So thank you for everything that you've given us today. I feel like we are all walking away with a whole new perspective on health and wellness and nutrition. Christa is always going to be our resident nutritional expert. So I don't think this will be the last time that we have this conversation, but I love that you've said, please reach out if anybody has any questions, concerns, or just want to bounce some ideas off of you. This goes for everybody listening. Like, please reach out to both of us via Instagram if you'd like to, at Christa Mantey and at Christy McCaffrey, or you can email us directly at thewisdomwork@gmail.com. Any topics that you want to hear us talk about, any suggestions that you have for our conversations, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for joining us here today. We're really excited to have this community growing. Like Christa said, the feedback from the first episode was just so encouraging to us. We're happy to know that you're listening. We're happy to have you here. And we're really excited to talk to you next time here on The Wisdom Work.